All right, good morning, church. Today we are in 2 Peter chapter 3. And man, I love this. I love this chapter. I love the book of 2 Peter. I love the Apostle Peter. One of the things that we see, this is really a theme over the entire second letter here from Peter. It's that we see it in 1 Peter 2. It's that he wants us so badly to live in the present with an eternal perspective. That's kind of like the overall theme that we see come through in this letter. And we really see it here in chapter 3. Peter begins this third chapter by telling us that he has something he wants to remind us of. And we saw this in chapter 1. He wants to remind us of something. And we see here in chapter 3 what this reminder is he wants us to remember the predictions of the holy prophets. And he wants us to remember what Jesus has spoken through the apostles. So prophets, apostles, what the Spirit has predicted through the prophets, what Jesus has spoken through the apostles. We should think this is like Old Testament, New Testament. Okay, this is whole Bible, big deal stuff that Peter is talking about here. So what does he have in mind? Well, he goes on to tell us it's the coming of Jesus. It's the second coming of Jesus. That's what he wants us to remember. And he goes a little bit on a tangent here because he starts talking about these false teachers. And the issue with the false teachers, what their false teaching was specifically, is that they were saying that Jesus is not going to come back. Jesus is not coming back. And in verse 4, we see Peter explains that what they're saying basically is, hey, look, the world has always been as it is. It's just same old, same old. He's not coming back. This is what you see is what you get. This is the way it is. Same old, same old. He's not coming back. And Peter confronts that and says, actually, they're missing something here important. That's not the way the world is, because they're overlooking an important event in history called the flood. He goes back to Genesis 6 and he's like, hey, there was a time when people perhaps thought, the world, it's always the same old. And then what happens? God sends a flood and wipes out the entire planet except for Noah and his family. And so what Peter is saying is like, hey, just like God did it then, God can do it again. God can send cataclysmic, world-destroying judgment like that. He can do it. He's done it before. He can do it again. And these false teachers are overlooking that. And then that's when we see in verse 8, I love this verse. He talks about timing, God's timing, our timing. He says that with the Lord, one day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. In other words, the way we think about time and the way God operates in time is not the same. We may think back to the flood, and we may say, and it is, we would say, that was thousands of years ago. That's a long time ago. That's not going to happen again. It's so long ago. But in God's timing, it's like last week. Right? The timing is different, and that's really important, because when we operate, when we think about God based upon our timing, we think, man, He's slow. God is slow. But when we think about God in terms of His timing, we think, wow, He's patient. God is so patient, and therefore, how do we live now? We're back to that eternal perspective here and how Peter closes the letter. How do we live now? Well, we live today in light of tomorrow. We live in the present, hoping in our eternal future with Jesus, which means, if we bring it down to a sentence, Peter is saying, because Jesus is coming back, live right. Live right. Pursue holiness. Become more like Him in this life, because you're going to be with Him forever. That is the message of 2 Peter.